Adriana Trigiani here with the great John Searles and Single Girls, the great read of the summer, big bestseller. John's just been on a 97,000 stop tour and had a ball, and everything was pink and there were cosmos because this is about Ellen Gurley Brown, this beautiful story of the swinging 60s and the woman who helmed Cosmopolitan magazine. Did I give it a good summary, Mr. Searles?
You always do, Adri. You're the best. Thank you, my dear. It's so nice to see you. And I want to say to everyone, Adri's not just my friend, but she's also my neighbor. So Adri and I get to, I see her when she's hosing down her stoop, and we have impromptu gossip sessions that no one should ever hear. And
No one should ever hear them, and we'll take it all to our graves, but a lot of hilarity, and of course, me hosing, usually with something that bubbles.
yeah, exactly.
So if you come by my house, people go, "Oh, it smells like Lysol." Well, that's what it is, folks. I've got
You're
Pine
trying to
Sol
clean
out
up New
there,
York
whatever it
City.
is. Okay, so let's talk about the ultimate New Yorker with the penultimate Horatio Alger story of being raised poor out in Arkansas, right?
Arkansas, Little Rock, yeah.
Little Rock, Arkansas, and comes to New York as a mouse burger. Her words, kind of a a lackluster girl, but she said, "I can write, and I'm going to invent a persona for myself to become the toast of New York and publishing and the great Cosmopolitan magazine." Have I got it?
You've got it. I mean, she lived, she lived, as you said, grew up in the South, and then she spent many years in Los Angeles working as a secretary. She worked 17 secretarial jobs, and then ended up becoming the highest paid female copywriter in the advertising business in the early 50s and in the late 50s, early 60s. And then she had this idea, her husband did, David Brown. She should write this book called Sex and the Single Girl. And so she wrote it because she was single, got married sort of later in life for that time, in late 30s. And it was a sensation, Adrian. It sold something like 2 million copies in 2 weeks. Think about that. You and I should sell that many copies. How about that?
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice. Then we could just sit on our front stoops.
Well,
in
what
the
are we
garden
doing
hoses.
here? I'm not here growing a beard. I'm here like hawking your book to get 2 million sold.
Exactly. Anyway, then she had an idea for a magazine because she had just had really unique, candid advice for women. And at a time, this might sound sort of obvious today, but in 1962, when she published Sex and the Single Girl, when she told women, you don't have to be, quote, herded and hypnotized into marriage. You can focus on career. You don't have to marry the first guy who comes along. You could date, enjoy your love life, your sex life without shame. And half the country was scandalized, including her mother, who hated the message, and half the country loved it. And so she started receiving hundreds of letters from women all over the country. And she thought, well, what if I have a magazine? So she came up with this magazine called Femme. She went around the city pitching it to everybody. Nobody wanted it. And Hearst magazine said, we're not going to give you Femme. It's too expensive, and you've never edited a magazine. And at that time, in the early 60s, almost every single women's magazine was edited by a man. And they said, but we'll give you this dying magazine. We're probably going to close it, but we'll see what you can do. It's called Cosmopolitan. So, and we all know what she did.
I mean, it is an astonishing story. And I don't know if I've shared this with you, but my aunt, who was my godmother, she's in heaven now, Geraldine Beaumont out of Chicago, was on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine in 1946.
Oh, wow.
And, we were always so proud of her. But listen, we don't know anything about the women in my family till they die. And then we found out she ran the news pool of the typists and the researchers at NBC in Chicago. I mean, she was a Helen Gurley Brown character.
So
A
working
Helen
girl in New
Gurley
York
Brown
City.
character. And yes. And I think what you captured so beautifully was women at the crossroads at that point, and women who wanted more than the traditional roles they were offered. In the 1960s, you could be an airline hostess called a stewardess, a nun, a teacher. That's it. And a nurse. That's it.
Nurse, or as we meet in the book, a call girl, sadly. So there's
Well,
also that.
that's a profession you know, I say nobody gets into that because they want to.
No, but we meet a call girl in the book because Helen in real life was obsessed about having Liz Smith, who's a character in the book, the famed gossip columnist. She's
Yes.
obsessed with having her write a story about a Park Avenue call girl. And it was a story they ran in Cosmo, which is kind of scandalous at the time. Later became that movie with Jane Fonda called Clute. Remember that movie? And
Yes.
so I and we meet a struggling actress out in Los Angeles who we see kind of what the Hollywood system has done to her, and also all the editors who Helen hires, and their stories are all really based on real Cosmo cover lines from the 1960s. So it's called Single Girls because it's not just a biography. I always tell people, I do all these events happily. And then, but at the end, someone always raises their hand and says, wait, it's a biography? And I'm like, no. So Thomas, my sweet husband, always says, make sure people understand it's dramatic fiction. So it's dramatic fiction. It's Helen's story. I keep saying to people, she's kind of like the sun, and the other editors are like the planets around her. And you see her impact on their lives.
And you created these vivid, imaginative, colorful amalgams of characters of the prototypes of women of the time.
Yes. And they were sort of composites also of women I knew when I was uh, entering magazines. When Helen Gurley Brown hired me, it was the mid 90s. And a lot of her team was just on their way out. They were at the end of their careers. So I remembered those women. I admired those women. And I kind of brought what I knew of them and then what I knew of the magazine in the 60s to life on the page. And
Yes.
when I was out in Los Angeles recently, I had dinner with Betty, the book is dedicated to her, as well as Helen and Liz and some other important women in my life, all Cosmo girls. And I said to Betty, by the way, Belinda Sue is based. She said, oh, you're not fooling me. I know she's based on me. And I wasn't trying to fool her. I was actually paying homage to her, but it was just funny the way she said it. I know Belinda Sue, the book's editor, is based on me. Because Betty was this beautiful, smart, well-read, glamorous woman. And she's the inspiration for Belinda Sue, the book's editor, in Single Girls.
Love it. Now let me ask this question. You worked at Cosmo. How many years did you work there?
23 years, Adri. You would see me in the morning leaving, looking very dapper, leaving for the office, coming home late at night.
Always. John, what happened to the American magazine? I got so many emails when I was having you on of people saying, please ask John, why are they gone? Why have they ended? What happened to them?
Sadly, people stopped buying them. That's really, it's a business, and people shifted their interest to online. And online, the wonderful thing about social media and the internet and everything is anyone can go on and create a platform for themselves. But it means that print places like Cosmo or, Glamour or Mademoiselle or Redbook, any of those magazines, their people don't only go to them anymore. They go online to all these different voices. So the culture just shifted. So that's part of what I was writing about. The reason I didn't just write a biography about Helen, first of all, there have been other biographies. I'm not a biographer, I'm a novelist. I was trying to write about more than just Helen's story, but the story of her team, the story of a magazine, Cosmo, and the story of an industry in the 1960s and how important magazines were because they really shaped culture in a way. And there's a scene toward the end of the book where the women are together and they're reflecting. It's the end, and it's literally New Year's Eve, 1969, about to be 1970, and they're wondering like what people will make of the work they did all those years ago. And they're wondering, they say, sadly, they probably won't think of us because magazines are really forgotten. Think about magazines, Adri. They're of a moment, then the moment passes and it's gone. And it's something I used to think my years editing magazines with a team of people, like we'd work in such a frenzy. And then a few months later, I'd pick up the magazine and it already kind of looked old and dated, weirdly. And I just think like you go back to old TV shows, you go back to old books, favorite movies, but you don't really go back to old magazines. I do because I
Only
was
me.
writing this book. Yeah, me
Only
too.
me who has stacks of them here because I find that they're evocative of a time, just like you're saying, but you're
Yeah.
right. They don't now some of us have grandmothers who kept magazines that were important to them on that little tray under the television set that
Yes.
you could wheel around. And my grandmother had, John F. Kennedy's assassination there as late as 1989. So
Of
there
course
was
you
a
did.
thing. There was a thing.
There was
And
a thing.
that's what I love about your book is that it brought me right back to what it was like then, what it meant, what a magazine like in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. I I waited for Mademoiselle to arrive. I waited for it. I couldn't wait till it was going to be the first of the month. But of course, we were in Appalachia, so the magazines didn't come on time. They came. We didn't get them the first day. We got them a week later. So I always felt like I was catching up. But let's talk about, perhaps what happened is that um, that the magazine industry didn't handle the social media industry smartly. They put all their information online, and I would hear women say, "I don't have to buy that, I'm gonna read it online."
Yeah.
Did you think that was true?
Oh, we saw it coming and we would try to find ways to deal with it. But, you can't, when an entire industry is, going one way, it's really hard to be one magazine. Oh, we're going to do it
Be
differently,
the outlier.
And so we would try different things, paywalls, different areas you had to pay for things. And it, and also we were, I was not doing it alone. I was working with Kate White, the wonderful editor in chief. She and I worked together for
Sure.
many, many, many years.
She's a
And
wonderful thriller writer now,
she is,
suspense
and
thriller,
and
yeah.
a dear friend, and, so we saw it coming and did everything we could, but it was like putting your hands over a dam, Adrian. You could not really
You
look
couldn't
at how
really
the
stop
world
it.
changed. I know, I would love to be the guy who stopped the internet, but, I don't think that was in the cards for me.
I don't think that was in the cards for anybody,
Yeah.
but Lord knows you tried, and in writing about Helen Gurley Brown, there's a set to me embedded in this novel of what it takes to make it. And she had written a book called Having It All, which I had the paperback version. And when I first went to Hollywood in the 90s, and worked on shows, I carried that book with me and would read it on the airplane, kind of coming and going, because it was like a coach, a life coach telling you, "Oh, you
She
could
was
do
good
this.
at that.
Now try this." Now, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you knew her
Yeah.
and she believed in your talent, and she would be over the moon that you wrote this because it's a very loving portrait of her and all the women that made that era. So can you talk a little bit about her, what she was like in real life?
Well, she was very glamorous, and if you asked me on the day I met her, which, by the way, the day I met her was the day of the O.J. Simpson verdict. It was my first day on the job at Cosmo, and we watched it in her very colorful office. And if you had asked me that day, Adria, "Oh, do you and Helen have anything in common?" I would have said, "No, she's this glamorous media icon. I'm this kid. My dad was a truck driver. I was waiting tables, trying to write a book." But it turned out we did have things in common. We had less than glamorous childhoods. She had the tragedy of her father's death. He died in a freak accident of something tragic, which I write about in the book, happened to her sister. I lost my sister after her high school prom. And we both love words, but we both had a certain like make something better of yourself pluck, like that I've always just had. Like,
Yes,
I'm going to make a better life. And she
yes.
loved writing and I loved writing. And she was just curious about people. And I'm the world's biggest eavesdropper, as my husband will tell you when we go to dinner. He's like, "Can you pay attention to me, please, and not the 5 tables around us?" But we turned out to have form this unlikely friendship. And she was really believed in me as a writer. Really, she tried to go to college. She wanted desperately to go to college. She went for a semester or two, and they couldn't afford it. So she dropped out and went to secretarial school. And like I had to put myself through college. So we had a lot in common. But she was always on a quest for self improvement. And I think it came from her mother used to say to her and her sister, "You're not pretty enough. You and your sister are plain as dish rags. You are not pretty. I don't know what you're going to do." And I think having that drilled into her head, the brainwashing did a number on her. And also, she faced so much sexism, which I capture in the novel. And I think it just made her really scrappy, really savvy. And, she called herself a mouse burger because she said it was this kind of mousy, unassuming woman who comes from no means, but through sheer tenacity can become a success and
Yeah.
transform herself. And that was her mission in life, self transformation, and to make herself this glamorous, successful woman. And she did it. It was amazing. She was great. And I loved her. And the novel is really my love letter to her, to Liz Smith,
Mhm.
who I knew and loved. Liz Smith, I knew, and she once called me in her column one of her little pets. I kind of
Liz
laughed.
Smith was the premier New York City gossip columnist and
Yeah.
was in with Big Texas Girl, knew everybody, had an incredible, contacts on the ground, and, she would be akin to I'm trying to explain this for the younger people, anybody in social media who you follow that gives you the news. And
Yes,
so she would
exactly.
be that person in the New York Post, and it was at Helen's behest, I believe, that sh that Liz Smith finally got paid a decent wage. She didn't really make a good living till she till Helen encouraged her to get what she was worth. And
Yeah,
this was another whole thing around these folks. And which leads me to this, and I could talk to you for 12 hours about this, to David Brown, the most elegant gentleman. You knew him too.
I did.
So
Yeah.
can you tell us about her husband? Because here this Massberger married once, long marriage to this wonderful man. And can you just talk a little bit about their dynamic?
I loved writing their love story. The last third of the book is really goes back to their love story and how they met
Yes,
and their
that's why I'm bringing it
courtship.
up.
And
Loved
it
it.
was so fun, Adri, to write about a man who is so supportive of the woman in his life and of his wife. And they were, first of all, both creative geniuses together. They were such a team. But he just loved her, adored her, supported her. And we don't see that as often as we might in fiction, and we don't see it as often as I would hope to in real real life. Sadly, I hate to say it. I mean, you and I are lucky. I know and adore your husband. You know and adore my husband, and there are many
Yes.
people out there with great husbands. So please don't send me angry emails, people. But but I'm just saying, it was a joy to write about not the husband who's a secret serial killer, but instead the husband who was really just a champion. David championed Helen and her ideas and was so proud of her and loved her. When I would see them, he'd come to the office or I'd see him out at things or different social events. He was just so dapper and he seemed like in the best possible way he stepped out of a time machine or something. He would wear the tweed jacket and the derby hat and they loved to go to the Rainbow Room and that he was just a gentleman, like you say.
You got this whole window into elegant old New York that you would
Yeah,
have never gotten. It's through this book, like so beautiful, detailed. Dear listeners, run and get Single Girls by John Searles because I love a summer read, but this is a classic read for all time. But
thank
it
you.
gives you such hope. And there's so much here that I emotionally connected to in their marriage, in their lives, in the way that she fought for writers and the written word and used her success to pull everybody in so they would have success too.
Yeah, and to tell people a fun thing, I how can you write a book about Cosmo without a quiz? So I put a quiz in the book for all of you who are watching this, uh, which was kind of fun because how often do you read a novel and you turn into and the the novel's asking you to take a quiz, but it's also my way of showing the quiz is uses real cover lines from the 1960s and asks you, how
Oh,
likely would
great.
you have been to want to read this story? And it was my way of showing how Helen and her team did so many stories that were ahead of their time. Like, there's the quiz,
Mhm.
there it is. So often Cosmo gets the bad rap of being the man chasing magazine. And of course, it's a fun magazine. There are those elements. I'm not denying it. But they also did stories on interracial marriage and birth control and uh, how to invest in stocks, how to get a divorce, a full color map of the female anatomy, and all of those things you could not Google in 1965. And I just thought, as I was writing the book and I got my hands on dozens of issues from the 1960s, I thought, wow, in the mix of all the silliness, like homosexual men could be habit forming, one woman story. I admit we can be habit forming. But in the midst of those kind of zany
How
articles,
about
there
the
were
guides? She printed guides of, hey girls, you're moving to New York City after college. These are the places you can live for a weekly rate of X.
exactly,
Send your letter now. And that was when I moved here, and I lived in the Millbank house. It closed in 1993, but in the 80s it was the jam on West 10th Street. And I made lifelong friends in there. That was her intention, was to share information. Like,
exactly, and
because if you were from Appalachia, or you were from Arkansas, or you from upstate New York, you didn't know anybody in New York. You didn't know how to get
no,
an apartment,
no.
and Cosmo was the go-to.
It really was the go-to for
Yeah.
all of that sort of stuff. So it was so fun to write about that, and that's why I put the quiz. And I also opened the book with a glossary of Helen's favorite terms because she had a really unique way of speaking. She called herself a mouse burger, like we said. She called everyone pussycat. Uh, what else did she say? Pippy poo, frippery. She just had a really unique way of speaking. So I wanted the book, Adri, and you know this. I usually write more kind of suspenseful, character-driven novels, but I had always had in my mind I want to write this book about this time period. And the world is a little dark right now. I don't know if you've noticed, just a smidge. And
And
so
smoky, and very
smoky
smoky.
and smoky and a lot of dark stuff. And I thought, I just want to write a joyful, happy book that offers readers an escape to a fascinating, colorful time, a hopeful time. The 1960s
Beautiful.
certainly had a lot of controversy going on too. But overall, on the surface, it's a happy book with a champagne glass hot tub trip in the Poconos and a quick Cosmo quiz, all this stuff. But then underneath, there is a serious current of everything that was going on with feminism in the 1960s and women's rights and the lives of the various women we encounter in the novel. So it was kind of a twofold thing of like lots of joy and happiness, but then underneath, I realized there was the serious kind of message. And
Yeah. It also helps all of us to be grateful to those women who carved this path, and she is a pioneer in it. And
yes,
she would never refer to herself as a pioneer because the clothes weren't good enough. But she was a pioneer. She carved the path for women writers and for magazines, and magazines have now become another whole thing. Well, we
exactly.
cannot thank you enough. We love you, John Searles. Single Girls is a big hit of the summer. We want it to keep going into the fall and the winter because it's such a delicious read. But you really are, you're a very special person in my life, but you're a special person in American literature. And I think every time you put out a book, you deliver excellence, beauty, truth. Sometimes I'm scared out of my pants, but I love it.
Out of your overalls.
Out of my overalls. That takes a minute. Out of my overalls. But I can't
Adri,
thank you enough.
if I was next door right now, I'd come running over and give you a big smooch, but I'm 2 hours away, three with traffic. So
That's
it'll
right.
have to wait till I see you hosing down the stoop to give you
You'll
the
see
big
me
kiss.
hosing with my Lysol, but just know that you are loved and that Single Girls is a masterpiece, and we're all thrilled for you.
Thank you, Adri. I adore you. I love you so much. Okay. All
Love you so
right.
much. We'll see you
Bye,
soon.
honey.
Bye.
Bye, honey. Bye.